Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. I wish you all a beautiful and prosperous Happy New Year as well, and welcome again to also another new season. So we're going to be working with some beautiful things this season. This is season 5 for those who are just catching up with us. And today I'm going to be focusing on a very simple lunchbox. I'm going to be showing you how to make some beautiful chicken stew. We're going to be pairing that with some beautiful Jeera rice and some coleslaw, which basically is going to accompany the dish. So without further ado, I'm going to start by introducing what we're going to be working with today. And I'm just going to start with my condiments at the front. So from the front, I've got some tomato paste and some beautiful knorr cubes there. I've also got some cayenne pepper, some beautiful cardamom seeds. I've also got some jeera there, a bit of salt, some beautiful jasmine rice, some mayonnaise and some butter. I'm also going to be working with some tomato and some peppers, some carrot and some courgette. I'm also going to use some bit of cabbage, some beautiful fresh coriander, some two pieces of chicken breast, some potato, a bit of apple, and a red and a white onion. I'm also going to be working with some vinegar, some olive oil, some beautiful vegetable stock, and some regular sugar. So if you're going to be grabbing your pens and papers now, this is a chance to do so. And when we come back from the short break, we're going to go dive into it, and I'm going to show you how really easy it is to make this beautiful lunchbox dish. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. We were on a short break, and now I'm just about to show you how to make a very simple lunchbox. I'm also going to show you some 2 lunch boxes that I'm going to be focusing on today. So I'm going to be using one bigger box here that is actually for an adult portion, and I'm also going to be using this small particular one here, which basically really works for kids. So remember, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, if you're just tuning in, we are going to be focusing on a beautiful season 5 full of very beautiful lunch-packed and dinner-packed ideas that you can actually be able to incorporate to this beautiful particular busy month. So without further ado, we're going to start off with our chicken here. So I'm just using some chicken breast. You can actually use chicken thigh with this recipe as well. It works just the same. So we're going to first off cube our chicken. So I'm just going to start by just splitting that. All I'm going to do is now cut that into some inch-size chunks. Just going to finish off cubing our beautiful chicken breast. And the reason why I'm actually cutting this into some nice chunks is basically for the reason that we're going to be making a stew. And remember, the idea is the chicken is actually going to shrink in size, so it's always a little safer to have a nicer chunk so that you actually don't cook them and actually shrink them too much. So as I mentioned, I'm working with chicken breast. You're more than welcome to actually work with chicken thighs as well. Doesn't really make a difference, and it's actually a little more cost effective. All right, so simple as that. I'm just going to turn on my pan, and what we're going to start off by doing is we're going to brown our chicken. So very important that you actually brown your chicken, give it a bit of color. So I'm just going to start off with a generous dashing of olive oil, and we're just going to give that a few minutes to heat up. And while that continues, we're going to prep all our other ingredients. So always crucial that when you're making a stew, always have a bit of a variety for ingredients you're going to be working with. So particularly for this one, I'm going to be using some beautiful peas. I'm also going to be incorporating some courgette in there, some peppers, and some tomatoes. So I'm just going to start off by coring our pepper. So easier for me. I like to use this particular method of peeling a pepper. It actually saves you the waste. So I like to start by taking off the top and the bottom, and very easily just make an incision with your knife, and then just press it onto your board and just rotate it like that. And as you can see, you actually save much more of the pepper and you don't really have waste. Right, so with that, we're just going to cut those into some beautiful chunks. So as I said, it's a very rustic stew. As I said, not really much particular influence or originality of the dish. As I said, this is just a lunchbox. So remember, for something that you are actually considering to carry with you to work, it should actually be a little easier to make, a little easier to eat, and very much stress-free. So our pan is nice and hot, it's smoking. So I'm just going to add my chicken. I'm going to turn up our heat a little bit. I'm just going to spread those out a little bit like that with a wooden spoon. And we're just going to finish off our vegetables. So also for the courgette, I'm also going to cut them into 1/2 inch chunks. And of course discard the rest. And then to that, we're also going to be incorporating some onion. So as you can see, the chicken really just starts to color at this stage, and as I said, very particular that you actually take some time to color and brown your meat really well. Remember, a lot of the flavors you're going to be developing along the way, but the color, particularly for chicken, it being very white and pale, this is a particular very good way to actually give it a bit of color. So we're just going to allow that to cook for about another 4-5 minutes, and then we're going to take it out and then continue with the rest. And in the meantime, I'm just going to quickly chop up some onion. So particularly for those that are looking at lunch boxes this particular season, remember, for most of you, January happens to be a very particular busy part of the year. Remember, you've got your kids going back to school, maybe you've got a very busy schedule at work, and you're just recovering from the holidays. Lunches, particularly for this season, it becomes very common for a lot of people because of economic strain to actually manage to afford to buy their lunch. So this particular season is really going to help most of you who are actually looking for options of lunches you can be able to take with you to work. Right, so our vegetables are nicely chopped up. So we're just going to continue to finish off browning our chicken. And while that continues, I'm also going to grab a pot here, and we're just going to steam some rice. So for that, I'm going to be using some stock. Remember, vegetable stock is, first of all, very nutritious. It's got a bit of flavor to it, and it actually gives the rice a better flavor than using just regular water. So I'm going to start off by pouring about a cup of stock in there. And we're going to turn on the heat on this end. And we're just going to give that a bit of time to heat up. In the meantime, we're going to rinse our rice really quickly. So for that, you'll need a strainer. Plastic or metallic, doesn't really matter. So very easily, rice into the strainer, and under running cold water, just work your whisk around. And this particularly will save you a bit of effort, especially when cleaning your rice. Remember, it's a little more friendlier, and you can actually be able to pick out the dirt and the grains really well. So simple as that. Rinse it under the tap for about a minute. Then you're just gonna take that out, and you're just gonna set that on top of a bowl and allow it to drain the excess liquid. So as you can be able to see, the chicken's now nicely browning, so we're just gonna let that continue for about another half a minute. And in the meantime, we're just going to quickly prepare our water for the rice. So very important, about a tablespoon of cooking oil. For this reason, I'm using olive oil. I'm also going to add to that about 2 pinches of salt. And then I'm also going to be adding a bit of some cardamom pods. So these are very particularly good for flavoring your rice. And I'm easily just going to put them on the board. Just smash them a little bit with a knife. This basically just allows you to get the flavors out of the cardamom. So always just pinch it a little open. Let actually expose the cardamom pods in there. I'm just going to do the same with the rest. So I'm just going to pierce them with the tip of my nail and just throw them into the water. And it's just gonna give that a bit of time just to infuse really quickly. And all we are going to do is now add in our rice. So as you can see, there's not much liquid really flowing through, and you can see the water is nice and clear, which means your rice is nice and clean. And we're just going to add that to the pot. And we're just going to give that about 10 to 15 minutes. In the meantime, we're going to come back to our chicken. So as you can see, the color is now very evident. You can actually be able to see what I mentioned earlier. Particularly, as I said, with chicken, you don't really get much option to color your meat. So this particular stage is very, very crucial. Now all we are going to do is turn that, pour that onto a plate, and we're going to allow that to rest for a little bit. Remember, it's particularly crucial to always allow your meat to rest for 2 reasons. It actually allows your meat to tenderize, and very much importantly, it allows you to not overcook your meat. So this particular reason is this is actually the only purpose I'm setting the meat aside. So we're just going to continue on the pan. I'm just going to give that a bit of oil. And we're just going to go in firstly with our onions. So I'm using 1 white onion, about 40 grams. And all I'm going to do now is just give that just a bit of color on the pan as well, and just allow them to just sweat out. And now to that, we're going to be incorporating also a bit of some cayenne pepper. And I'm also going to use a bit of some cumin powder. Just going to give that a quick stir. Remember, very important to actually just cook your spices slightly just to really get the infusion to get through. And now to that, we are simply just going to go in with our vegetables. Right, so all you want to do now is allow that to just fry as it is, just dry for a few seconds. So I'm just going to incorporate a bit of stock in there, and I'm just going to allow that to come to the boil. And in the meantime, I'm quickly going to just grab a spoon, and we're just going to check the rice. I'm just going to try and break the grains a little bit. Alright, so our rice is about halfway done. Now simply to that, as I mentioned, we're making some Jeera rice, and Jeera is basically another name for cumin. So I've got some beautiful cumin powder there, and I'm just going to incorporate that into the rice. And now basically, just to rush the process a little bit, I'm just going to cover that up and drop the temperature. So this basically just allows me to trap all that steam and basically allow that steam to really infuse the rice when the cumin just went in. So it's really just going to give it a beautiful, powerful flavor. And in the meantime, our vegetables are still going. So very simply, I'm just going to grab a potato, and I'm using a small knife to peel. So I'm just going to peel that really quickly. And now I know for most of you who are probably wondering why I didn't add the potato earlier and the other vegetables cook a little faster than the potato. There is actually a trick to it, so I'm just going to show you now. Right, so very, very simply, peel your potato, and I always insist to wash your potato before you peel. Remember, first of all, it actually limits you from spreading the germs or spreading any dirt that could be in your potato. And second of all, there is a beautiful trick to actually peeling your potato after washing it, because there is a bit of juice in there that is actually very crucial for this particular technique. So very simply, I'm just going to grab my zester and I'm just going to grate that potato in there. So remember, for the reason that the potato is now a little finer, it actually allows the potato to cook much faster. So you basically have a stress-free time cooking your stew. But remember, if you're going to be cutting your potatoes into chunks, I always recommend throw those in before the courgettes and the peppers, because the potato will take a little longer to cook. So I've used only one potato, that's about 50 grams. I'm just going to quickly finish that off. And always, as I said, I like to not waste, so just use a spoon to scrape the rest of it from your strainer, from your grater. And always remember to also turn it to the back and just scoop out everything that's in there. Right, so we're just going to give that a quick mix. And now we're just going to finish off by adding a bit of paste, and also going to be incorporating a bit of some stock cube. I'm also going to be adding just a tiny bit of butter and some salt. But as I said, I'm going to be incorporating some of the beautiful ingredients in front of us today. So I'm also going to be adding some peas in there. And we're also going to be using some tomato. But I'm going to be grating this, passing this through the grater as well. So I'm just going to get a different attachment for that. And I'm going to be using one that's a little finer. So this is also a beautiful technique to really rush the process of cooking. And remember, as I said, you're looking for something easy to have for lunch. You're looking for something easy for the kids as well. So this is very, very easy, and you can actually rush through this as a lunch meal. So I'm just going to press the tomato right through the sieve. Remember, this is a very, very quick way of just pureeing your tomatoes, if of course you don't have a blender. But if you do have one, or a food processor, you can actually use it just the same. So we're just going to quickly just try and get all the juices from the inside of the tomato. But we're actually not going to use the skin. So I'm only going to use about half a tomato, considering this is actually a very large tomato. But if you're going to be using a smaller tomato or a medium one, you can actually go with about 2 or 3 pieces. Right, so we're going to discard those. And very simply, just give that a quick mixture. And now we're just going to go in with all our other ingredients. So just to finish that off, I'm going to be incorporating a heaped teaspoon of tomato paste. I'm also going to be adding about half a cube of no chicken cube. And then last but not least, just a bit of salt for seasoning. Also a bit of just some black pepper. Right, so we're just going to, and now as you can be able to see, our rice is now fully cooked. So I'm just going to turn that off and just let that sit to the side. Right, so you will actually start to notice that as the potatoes continue to cook, it is going to start turning into a bit of a smudgy consistency. You will actually start to notice it thickening quite a bit. So at this stage now, all that's left to do is incorporate your chicken. And we're going to add just a bit of liquid just to allow the vegetables and everything else to cook down really well. And then last but not least, just a little bit of that fresh coriander. Right, so I'm using about 3 tablespoons, and I'm using just the leaves without the stalks. Right, so we're just going to allow that to continue cooking till it's ready. And we're also going to take a short commercial break, which will allow me to clear my workstation. And when we come back, I'm going to be able to show you what this looks like when it's fully cooked. And remember, we still have a coleslaw that we're going to be making really quickly. So I'm going to see you after the short break. Please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just tuning in, if you're just catching up with the show, we were making some rice on the side. We were also making some beautiful chicken stew now that's already ready to serve. But last but not least, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, we are going to be working on a coleslaw salad. So very, very particular, simple ingredients to use. I'm just going to introduce them as we continue. So foremost, I'm going to be using a fresh cabbage. I'm just going to take off that dark outer layer, and all we are going to do is just cut that really, really thin. I know for most of you, you might actually be able to slice your cabbage holding it upright, but for demonstration reasons and for safety reasons as well, I always insist, always work with a chopping board. It saves you the effort of struggling with chopping and cutting. And second of all, it actually allows you to work a little faster. So I'm just going to shred about, say about half a cup of cabbage. That should be about enough. And to that, we're just going to be moving these ingredients into a mixing bowl. I'm going to be using a glass bowl for that purpose. So, very simply, cabbage in. Secondly, we're going to go in with some carrots. So I'm just going to peel that really quickly. Always remember to take off the tips as well. Remember, there's a bit of sand that is always hidden in there. And your peeler, particularly this particular peeler, really does the trick for that. Actually allows you to core off the tips, just to make sure you don't have any grains of sand still stuck on your carrots. We're just going to discard the skins. And then easily, we're just going to grate that in. So I'm just going to grab a regular size insertion for the grater. We're just going to grate that in there. So we'll use about half a carrot to that. And we're also going to be grating in a bit of some Granny Smith apple. So apple really does the trick, particularly for bringing a bit of flavor in there. So I'm just going to grate about half of that. And the rest I'm actually going to just cut that in half, and I'll show you why I'm doing so. Right, so simple as that. For the leftover apple that you have, you could actually just take off the cores as well, take the seeds out, and I would actually just leave that in the lunch boxes as I mentioned, and this we can reserve. So easy peasy, quick and easy coleslaw. Now to that we'll also be adding about half a teaspoon of salt. I'm also going to be adding about a tablespoon of sugar. Just regular brown sugar. We're going to also incorporate some apple cider vinegar, about 2 tablespoons. Also going to add about half a tablespoon of olive oil. And then we're also going to add a bit of some red onion just for color. So this I'm not actually going to chop it finely, we're just going to cut some nice big rings. So remember, this is just to aid in presentation. So about half a red onion should do really well for that. That goes into our bowl as well. And now last but not least, our mayonnaise. So I'm just going to first of all start with about 3 tablespoons just to be safe, and also to make sure you don't add too much at once. And all we are going to do is give that a mix. So very, very important that you actually add some acid to your coleslaw. And alternatively, if you actually have some dietary requirements that don't allow you to actually use vinegar in your food, a fresh squeezed lemon really does a trick. So you can actually substitute that with a lemon. There's also many other variations. There's some of you who might actually have tried to do it with some imported oranges or some orange juice. Really works well as well. Apple juice also is another alteration to it. So very, very many alterations to coleslaw. And the internet, as I said, there's so many varieties of recipes out there. So do your research, try out new things, and definitely you will actually appreciate this simple and easy, beautiful salad. Right, so now that is all mixed up. Now that's now ready to serve. So we're just going to now start off plating our beautiful lunch boxes. And very, very, very simple. I'm just going to just let that rice steam off a little bit. Now, very, very crucial, as I said, beautiful thing about this particular clicking lock lunch boxes, they actually come with this insertions in there which actually allow you to portion out your meal. So very, very simple. If you're looking at some beautiful container options for carrying your lunch to work, this particular containers work really well for 2 reasons. And I'll actually explain them at the bottom here. If you turn the container back, if you look at the bottom of the container, there's actually some beautiful signs there that actually tell you more about the container. So you might actually see one with about 2 rings on it with some lines across. So that actually informs you that this is actually microwavable, it's microwave friendly. So you can actually throw this in your microwave and warm your food. And the second one there, you've got something that looks like an ice, more like a snowflake. So basically that also tells you that this is actually freezable. So you can actually make your meal in advance. You could actually freeze it and take it with you if you're traveling and just defrost it and warm it up much later on. There's also another sign there which tells you they're recyclable. So which means you can actually recycle this. You can use it as many times as possible, which makes it not disposable. And last but not least, there's a little fork there and a little cup. Basically, that tells you this is designed to carry food, which means some of you might actually have used this in your offices to put your staples or your paper clips in there. But as I said, this particular sign actually gives you a go-ahead and tells you this is fit to carry food in. So we're just going to start off by plating these. And as I said, I'm using these beautiful inserts because they actually just slide in. So very, very simple. I would just start off by adding a bit of rice in there. And as you can see, they really help. They really allow you to portion out. So if you do have some kids, this is definitely something that will work for them. And then to that, we can also scoop a bit of that beautiful chicken stew. Right, simple as that. Last but not least, we're also going to add just a little bit of coleslaw. So I've made this particular one fresh, but remember you can actually make your coleslaw salad in advance, leave it in the fridge. It should be able to sit for a nice beautiful day or 2 in your fridge if it's made fresh. But I always insist, if you're going to be making something for lunch, especially for your kids, you don't really want to serve them leftovers that have been sitting in the fridge too long. If you do have leftovers maybe from dinner, those work really well, but I always insist, if you're going to be taking something with you to eat on the way, Try and make sure it's as fresh as possible or cooked as close as possible to time. That way you don't actually have a risk of poisoning yourself. So as you can see, now that's beautifully plated. So that would be a portion I would actually serve for maybe even my young child at home. That should actually be a very, very beautiful, easy lunch to take with you. And now for the adult portion, very simple as well. I would just pair that beautiful piece of apple with the coleslaw in one tin. Just like that, very, very simple. And then to the other one, we'll just repeat the same process. Just a bit of rice. And I know definitely this particular season is really going to work for most of you, because I particularly have seen it even working as a private chef. I have seen a lot of families struggle, particularly in the months of January, when your year starts really bad and the budget is really tight and you don't really have enough time to do all this housework and all this food for your family. So this really, really is, I'm very, very certain this particular season will actually be of an advantage to most of you. And as I said, the beautiful thing with this beautiful takeaway containers is you can actually prep your meals in advance and keep them in the fridge. You can actually prep them just beforehand and just take them with you to work. And it actually is very handy that you can actually be able to pack this for your kids. So as you've all been able to see, a very, very simple lunchbox, and I bet some of you, or most of you, are actually going to try this at home. And as I said, lastly, if you're going to be carrying this and you have an option to warm it up much later, or if it's just fresh and it's still hot, I always insist, let it actually cool off. Remember, once you close this, you actually trap a lot of steam in there. So very important that you actually allow the food to actually breathe a little bit, let it cool off. And then also very important, there's a lock. So this actually just fits right on it very easily. I'm just going to demonstrate quickly. So these actually lock really well, and the beauty of these containers is you're very certain that this won't open and spill over your work or your children's homework in their bags. So the beautiful thing with this particular container is it comes with a lock, which actually is safer. It allows you to actually carry your food really well. And actually it also has a seal right underneath the cap there, which I'm just going to quickly show you. So this particular seal is really, really good, and I insist if you're going to be buying a lock and lock container, always make sure that the seal comes with it. That is particularly for making sure that if you're carrying something liquid in there, it's not going to spill. And if you're trying to also keep it airtight and not allow the fumes to really just go right all over the office, maybe you're carrying pasta with garlic, that actually allows you to also keep the smell and the aromas of your food at a minimal. So very simple and easy, and I'm hoping some of you or most of you are actually going to be able to try this yourselves. So it has been a pleasure with showing you how to make this today, and I hope you've learned something new today that you can implement in your day. My name is Chef Andy, and you have been watching Lunch Guide on BrandPlus TV. Do join us on the next episode, where we're just going to constantly bring you some new ideas on how to prep a very easy and convenient lunch or dinner for you and your family. And until the next episode, I'm going to bid you farewell, and once more, have a lovely new year. See you soon.